Well, welcome everybody. It's Marilyn Wilson here from RE Technology. I'm here today with some of our friends and colleagues and vendors or relationships with Remine. We're going to talk today about Remine Docs. It's a great program, really sort of next gen of digital transaction management. That's kind of the word on the street I hear from my MLS colleagues that are using this, not including just those two on the call, but many others. So wanted to welcome Heather Embry, Jeremy Crawford, and Leo Perea with us today. As you see, Heather is the 2021 Secretary Treasurer for the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors, in addition to a highly successful realtor herself. Leo is the co-founder and president of Remine, and Jeremy is the current CEO of First MLS or FMLS in Atlanta. Some of you may know him from his days when he was CEO of RESO. So he's been around, done several different things, worked all over the place, right, Jeremy?
Yes.
So today we're going to talk about a few things. I'm going to just kick it off a little bit. I wanted to let you know that we're going to be publishing this shortly. Wave Group recently did a study looking at sort of the state of transaction management. We've actually been tracking this category of technology since 2005, from the very early days, from our first heyday market several years ago. And what's really exciting about it, as we've watched it grow and blossom, is that it really is kind of a gotta have now. Pretty much every strong either association or MLS, it depends on how the market's organized, is offering something like this today. And why? Because it really helps create an efficient marketplace, right? Everybody that is involved with organized real estate is trying to find a way to make it easier for people to buy and sell property. And programs like Docs Plus are a great way to do that. In the research that we found, that not only before COVID, but during COVID, something like transaction management became even more critical, as you would imagine, right? Because we could close things digitally when it was difficult or uncomfortable sometimes to do things in a live situation. It was also a great way to keep people in tune, meaning that our clients in tune as we were going through the process. And I think it was something like 85% of the brokers that we talked to said it was a valuable service and getting more valuable all the time. So this is something that if your organization doesn't have one, you kind of really have to think about this now. One thing about COVID is that I think it taught us all, or required us all, to become more virtual, much more digital than we were focused in the past. And so, this is something that, again, if you haven't thought about it or don't have it, you got to have it. Secondly, what's neat, you're going to see in a minute about Docs Plus, is it's taken this concept to the next gen. The reason we started talking about this category in 2005 was that's when a lot of the products that are in the market were launching, right? This was 2003, 2004. Some of these products that are out there today are as much as 20 years old. While in their day, they were, breakthrough and highly relevant, a product like Docs Plus that's literally brand new out of the box can use today's technology, can use the needs of what a realtor in today's market requires, with all the sensitivities and changes in the way the market's working and multiple offers and all the crazy stuff. So it's great. And then some of you may be in the situation where you've used, the ZipLogix NAR benefit for many years. And as some of you may know, that's ending at the end of this year. So if you want to continue to offer something that's valuable and relevant to your members, and I know many people get very attached to their transaction management systems, this is a great opportunity for you to take a look at it. So we're going to talk to Heather in just a bit. She's going to talk about how it works for the Northern Virginia Association. Jeremy's going to look at kind of a one-stop shop approach that they work with Remine in the very large Atlanta market. But before all we do that, I wanted to have Leo kind of take us a step through this thing. What is this Docs Plus thing? One of the things that's I think important to understand about Remine is there's more and more components of the system being launched all the time. But and I don't know, Leo, if I'm the only one that feels this way, but I hear it sometimes that people think of Remine as the original product that you did, which was awesome and, public records based. But, it's like, if you haven't seen Remine lately, you haven't seen it, I guess is how I would say, right? There's a lot more to it these days than there was. And it's in components like Docs Plus, where Yes, you can buy the whole program, as you're going to see that Jeremy's doing in his market, but you can also buy this strong component on its own. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leo, and maybe you can take us through, show us all the neat stuff about, what this product does and how it does it. And ideally show us, if you can, the places where this may look a little new for some of us that may have used some of the other tools that have been around for quite some time. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marilyn, for the introduction. As you pointed out, I start feeling old because I started selling real estate in 2002 when it was literally a 6-page contract, and we pushed hard with a white, a yellow, and a pink copy, which we then try to stick in a fax machine, which ate half the contract. So I remember the very first time I got to fill out a digital contract, and it was a game changer. So I feel very part of that. As you mentioned, we launched with Remine Pro as our flagship product, which is a public record and alternative front-end MLS, because it provides both public record and MLS data. But what we've learned from partners like Jeremy and other MLSs who've really been with us since the beginning is, if we were going to grow in this space, we really had to create this modularity. There's a lot of different contracts that play with different lengths, and it was very easy for us to be able to launch new products as long as we didn't kind of force the whole bundle down anyone's throat. If somebody wanted it, we could add it as need be. And one of the things, because we have the ability to start basically from scratch, is take advantage of modern code stack, but really spend time with these MLS executives who've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly and said, hey, do's and don'ts. If we could dream this up from scratch, what would you want and what would you not want? And so whether it's our ad edit or a database technology or API distribution and our transaction management, which has been going very, very well, we've been able to think of it from the ground up and take advantage of what's available in modern technology. So right now I'm logged into the Bright instance, which I'm still a dues paying member. So I grew up in the DC area selling real estate as a member of MRIS and a dues paying member of NVAR. So that one system was very kind of near and dear to my heart, but it's a pretty awesome example of how it could be done in a way where it's, piece by piece. So in this example, Bright MLS licensed Remine Pro, and then Ryan from NVAR licensed the docs component just for his membership. So even though there's 100,000 members in Bright MLS, Ryan's 14,000 members have an additional functionality that lights up right here. And we're actually using the Nerds API to validate his membership and only allowing certain members to get that functionality inside of the Bright ecosystem. And where it's really cool is if anybody knows anything about the DC metropolitan market, there is a high percentage of agents that sell real estate in a 20-mile radius that cross 3 state lines and 8 counties. So inside of Bright MLS as an NVAR member benefit, we've done data licensing agreements with GCAR across the river, which cover Montgomery County in Maryland and the entire District of Columbia. And so if you're a Northern Virginia agent with licenses in DC and Maryland and a membership into GCAR, we actually unlock not only Northern Virginia Association, Maryland Association, Greater Capital Association of Realtors, and add that into the library seamlessly. So there is nothing the agent needs to do. We're hitting the NERDS database, figuring out which states you're licensed in and where you have memberships, and we just unlock more libraries for you. And we're doing that all behind the scenes, and we're continuing to do that around the Bright footprint. But real quick, the part that people really like is kind of this, the table stakes transaction management. If you just logged into it, as Heather was telling us on our prep call, where she just logs directly into it and very traditionally will enter a listing MLS ID and start populating the transaction. But I'm back here on Remine, and for the folks on the call who are current customers that don't have transaction management, the system looks almost identical. You can click into it and open up your dashboard. Every Remine Pro instance comes with a built-in signature PDF tool, but the transaction management is the one that Jeremy's going to speak to and Heather's going to speak to. We allow you to build full contracts. If your Pro instance brings on that transaction management, what you'll see is that you will have additional buttons. So create a transaction only lights up if you are a transaction management customer, and you can click into it. It launches the transaction management platform. It says, hey, are you trying to write this contract as the buying agent or the listing agent? And then it starts populating all the fields that you would need in order to do that. And as you click next, it's very simple. It defaults to your library. So if I was licensed in DC, Maryland still, I would get all the additional repositories. I can build packages as both an agent and as a broker. So I can make all my required forms, have them all programmed. For the sake of the example, I'm just going to select just the residential real estate contract. And what it's doing is that it's taking all of the information in both public record as well as MLS data and populating the contract. And what we hear constantly from agents is that it's intelligent. So we spend quite a bit of time during the onboarding process to code all the logic that you want to share with us. So, those T's and the addenda, if you have a clause library, if you have a form library, we can build as much logic as someone would want into it. When we launch a market, we default with whomever is the customer's logo, but it's all self-service where brokers can upload their own logos. We populate as much as we can. We make it easy to add and subtract folks to the contract. In just a click of a button, you click back to it, it auto-populates everything. And the one we constantly hear from folks in the field is we've already tagged all the logic. So once you build a contract, you don't actually have to then download it, take it to an e-signature technology, and then drag and drop. We've sat down with the folks of the association or the MLS who are giving us the contracts, and we spend a lot of time typically with the general counsel asking if then what questions. So the forms actually are designed to actually save time and protect you from liability. So what do I mean by that? So as you're populating the contract and you were to input a date, so it's just the simple things that as an agent, you might be on the fly, you might pick a holiday, we'll actually immediately flag it for you. Hey, are you sure you want to do that? So, and if you were to use our negotiation tool and go back and forth, if you counter somebody on the closing date, but didn't change the contingency of the financing, we'll pick that up and tell you, hey, you shorten it by 15 days, you're now outside of the contingency requirement. I'll scroll real quick here to the bottom because this is something that seems trivial to someone not in our industry, but somebody who gets to be in our industry, especially on the broker management side of it. If you can see, we don't even unlock the ratification box until we've completed and collected meeting of the minds, legally speaking. So it's just simple things like that. I used to be a managing broker and all the headaches that come with that. It's all in one place. You can sign it on a tablet in front of your customer. We use their emails or canonical ID. We track IP addresses, device information, who, what, when, and where. You can send for signature directly from the technology. And you could toggle back and forth between both the contract view and a field view, which was a lot of the feedback we got from customers, whether if you're in the car, you're in this multiple contract situation, you need to amend something. If you get it, you're on your mobile phone, you can switch it to this field view and very minutely be able to see what, when, and where, what changed, and how it all went. But it's just kind of that all-in-one functionality. You can upload checklists, you can submit to your back office, you can impersonate users in your own office, and it would be on behalf of, and it's all embedded and deeply integrated. I'll just touch real quick on a couple of things because the point of this is not to do a demo, it's more to have a conversation with real life customers. It's just not only MLS technology, but it's that really robust public record technology. So I just went back into an unlisted property, and as you can see, you can't schedule a showing or do any of that other stuff that technology allows you to do. But if you go to create a transaction on an unlisted property, I could then submit the listing information, right, immediately from the application, from being in the property. And if there's any additional information, we can pull it as well. So it's all about all in one. I won't talk too much about the other integrations, but I'll let Jeremy address that. But in Ad Edit, if you have localized forms like an input form, we can actually allow the information from the listing agreement and or the listing input form to translate directly into the Ad Edit, saving 80–90% of double entry for an agent. So with that, Marilyn, I'll pass it back to you and you can take it from there. I really just wanted to give a visual representation of what Heather and Jeremy were talking about so people could kind of follow along mentally.
So this is awesome, Leo. Thank you for showing it to us. First of all, it looks super easy to use, and Heather's going to talk more about actually if it's easy to use, but as a layperson, it looks awesome. And let me just clarify a couple things because I think that I understand this, but I want to make sure. So this can be integrated. So in an MLS situation, and Jeremy can talk to this, this can be seamlessly integrated into listing setup, I assume. So if I set up a listing in the MLS and then say set up a transaction, I can do that right from inside of the MLS system. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes?
absolutely.
Okay, great. So that, because I know in studies that we've done in the past, when you make it super easy, logical, right? Shouldn't need to study for that. If you made it super easy and it's right there, right as I'm setting up the listing, it makes it so much, the adoption rate and the usage of this is so much higher. So that's awesome. But it sounds like you can do this. I could start directly from Remine, or I can start from inside of my MLS system, depending on how my structure with the rest of the organization I'm working with is set up. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Absolutely.
All right, good. Well, this is exciting stuff. We're going to turn it over now to Heather. I'm going to, if maybe you want to just stop your screen share for a second, Leo, and then we can just see. Heather, if you want to turn your camera on, that would be awesome. There she is.
Hi there.
So as I said, Heather's from the Northern Virginia Association. She's an officer within the company, but you're also an active realtor, I assume, right? You've done.
Absolutely. The gray hair will prove it.
Yeah, especially right now. So why don't we talk about this first from the NVAR perspective, and then you as a user. So tell us kind of, how did you get to Remine Docs? Because I believe you were working with another company and then switched over here. Can you tell us kind of how that process worked and how you ultimately ended up with Remine?
Yeah, sure. So a work group was convened in February of 2020 because our system, our existing system, Instinet, was expiring, and we wanted to be able to offer something more innovative to our members. So we had a work group that was started in February of 2020, and after interviewing about and researching very deeply for well-known forum service providers, they recommended to the board that we consider Docs Plus because they felt it provided a highest value. And again, it was a very innovative product and it was expandable. So we thought that would be a good option for our members.
So I know in other markets, and I know California especially had some drama when it comes to transaction management, that and it's like any tool, right? Well, you know, it's the don't move my cheese philosophy, right? I'm comfortable. It may be not exactly what I'm looking for, but I know how to do it. So don't mess with it, right? I'm busy. I got things to do. COVID's here. Stop talking to me about this. How did you manage that transition from a system that people probably had been using for quite some time over to a new system?
Yeah, we didn't have any drama. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I will tell you, we actually did. We ran the systems parallel for several months and gave lots of education and lots of warning and lots of how-tos to the members that used it. So they had plenty of time to adapt. And surprisingly, you know, we did that, I guess, from September to the end of December with weekly notices and weekly tips. And when January 1 rolled around and we converted 100% over to Docs Plus, we really didn't have too many issues. It was very seamless.
That's awesome. And what kind of feedback are you getting from your customers about it so far? From your
Well,
members?
so keep in mind that we have about 13,000 members, and a lot of those members, the members who are using it now, are either smaller brokerages who don't have corporate platforms provided to them, or they're the early adopters, the innovative people in our agents in our association who launch onto new products. And so we've gotten good feedback. I'm trying to think of any complaints that we've gotten. And so far, the only problems that we've run into have been, and I hate to say it, but kind of lack of preparation or just user error. So we've been very fortunate with the members that are using it now. They seem to enjoy it.
That's great. Now, tell us about it from your perspective, because obviously you were one of those users that used Instinet and has moved over to this. Tell us the differences in your experience with the two technologies.
So I actually, I still run two platforms parallel just because my office uses one for transaction management on the back end. So it's somewhat frustrating because I use, Docs Plus speedily and get everything done. And then I've got to womp womp, move it over to the other one so it can be processed. But, I come from a small office with a big name, and they're looking to incorporate Docs Plus into their back end as soon as possible, so we don't have to run them parallel. Plus, it'll free up some funds so they can help agent growth instead. But it helps me because in this demanding market, I often have fewer than a couple hours to submit an offer. And in that time, I have to vet the property and track down the lender letter, run the CMA, determine the seller's need, and also come up with a creative winning strategy. So needless to say, the last thing I want is a complicated platform to prepare the offer. And that's one of the reasons I prefer Docs Plus, because it saves me time by transferring over all the pertinent information from our MLS, Bright, I should say, and creating the initial signature stamps and proofing the paperwork before I submit it to my client. Because in haste, I do make mistakes, and it's nice to have those little warnings, and I go back and make sure we got everything filled in.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. That seems like such a time saver. Do you find that when it says, hello, don't do that, does that help you?
It does. It scares me first because I'm like, what did I do wrong? But most times I go back, and even if it doesn't really apply, I'm like, oh, that's okay. I would prefer to be aware of it than wait in my other system, I would download it as a PDF and then put it into my signature service. And as I'm, dragging the signature request lines over the initial over, I'd be like, oh, I forgot to fill in that one little checkbox. And then I'd have to, change it and re-upload it. So yeah, this is a huge time saver, and it's very helpful to me.
I would think brokers would appreciate that too, because they have to have oversight on all of these documents as well, right? So if they know that you help them,
I would say I'm actually I've been a managing broker on and off for our firm for different reasons. And gosh, looking over those forms, I just like, so yeah, I think it's wonderful. Plus, brokerages can come up with packages that include their corporate documents that are required. So it's easier for agents who are either newer or just trying to get through a transaction, having those documents all populate for them so they know these are the ones I have to use. Instead of having to find them and drag them over to what, so you can fill them out and have them signed.
That sounds great. And with the signature, it doesn't sound like you have to download it and re-upload it within the Remine docs. Is that right?
No, that's the amazing part. As you move forward, you enter your client. So if I represent the buyer, I insert the buyer's name, and it automatically creates those signature stamps requests all the way through the document. So that's amazing right there. That's a huge time saver right there.
And that's all, it's all in Leo, for your perspective, it's all one system, right? When you buy Docs Plus, you get the signature with it, or is that separate?
Absolutely. And to Heather's point, we actually also, as service, will code all the broker documents.
Oh, good. So if there's state association forms or local association, plus if the brokerage has additional.
Yeah, if you're an independent and have your own, affiliated disclosure agreements or checklists, that is not an additional upsell fee at all.
Awesome. Yeah, I know sometimes people charge brokerages when they have to program their own stuff. So that's awesome to hear. Because at the end of the day, the brokerage is looking for oversight on all of it, not just the forms that are coming from the state or the local association. That's awesome. So, Heather, when you went through this transition, what advice do you have? And, there's a lot of associations looking at this right now. What advice would you give them on how to make this a smooth transition and how to make a good decision for your group?
Well, I think, we didn't get in the weeds on the board level. We trusted the recommendation of our committee. So I would say just be sure to provide enough time so that your members can, like we did, we ran both systems parallel if you have an existing system, but give them time, and most important, give them training. So we have a Tuesday and Thursday webinar that we've been doing I think since the first of the year.
Mhm.
That's goes everywhere from how do I log in to how to do all the upscale options that, Leo just zips through it all. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. So even I still take these classes so that I can continue to learn, tips and tools of this document. But without doing all of that, I'm still able to use it, because keep in mind, we're realtors, we're not tech people. We just want to be able to get in, get what we need, and get out. And that's been very easy to do with Instanet. Sorry. No, not Instanet. I'm sorry. Docs Plus. I have too many things up on my board. I'm going to close them out now. So there we go. I see a Leo. Sorry, Leo. With Docs Plus, it's been very easy to work with.
So Leo, there's a question, and I think this is probably best served for you to answer, from Jack Edwards. Does the platform allow for fillable forms to be created by the end user, in our case, an MLS, or do forms need to be submitted for implementation to your staff to do it for the group?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And actually, it's the logic that we build into the forms that creates that ease of use for Heather. So we do it, but that's really part of the onboarding process. And we have SLA required, agreement terms that we put in there as to how quickly we'll turn around forms. So if it's a legal thing, and Jeremy can attest to how quickly we can turn stuff around, because the whole point of when we went into this space is we didn't just want to add one more Apple. We really felt like the landscape was a lot of very similar products of the same age and vintage, if you will, but we wanted to kind of take it one dramatic leap forward. And in order to do that is really to deliver that logic. But that I would say that's something we can pride ourselves with, and how quickly we turn around.
So it's a quick turnaround, but I think you're right. We were talking about this yesterday at another meeting, that I think a lot of times what technology has done historically, and this next gen, like Docs is getting away from that, is we kind of took a manual process and we put it online. If we think about, we had books, we had input that we filled it out on a piece of paper, and then we put that online. This is taking it to another level and saying, let's leverage the ability we can add intelligence into this, let the computer do more work for us, right?
You hit it on the head. Actually, when I get in front of a tech committee, and I vividly remember explaining that to Heather's committee, is we think that the current technology digitized the analog process, but it was a one-for-one swap. We took a pen and made it a mouse. We took an email or a fax and made it an email, and a piece of paper, a PDF. But in the end, it's the same kind of convoluted logic of scratching back and forth. Which one was version A, version B? Like, we have version control, it's all there. And at the end, it could still be as sloppy, if you will. And unfortunately, when that comes to fruition in a hearing of some sort, whether it's at the state level, at the association level, he said, she said, version control and that level of detail as to who, what, when, and where makes a completely different time and process. And I would say that this is the first piece of technology I've ever sold in our suite, where it's typically the general counsel at the MLS or the association who is most excited, right? Because just by being able to give them this logic of, like, when we said, hey, do you want us to lock that ratification? It's like, that's 10% of the problems, where, people jump the gun on filling initials and boxes. And then there's an argument of meeting of the minds that it was missing an initial after the fact. And it's like, okay, we can actually code it to not do that. And that was a game changer.
Well, I think it's pretty cool if you can get Heather, an active realtor, and a lawyer to agree and to both be excited about it. That's pretty good. That's hard to do. So that's awesome. Oh, good. Well, thank you, Heather. Anything else that you'd like to offer to the group? Or if not, we'll jump over to Jeremy. And by the way, anybody on the call, feel free to, throw in questions to the group, because we want to make sure that this is, really helpful for you.
Yeah, no, I just thank you for having me today. I'm happy to talk about the experiences we've had, and I do highly recommend it.
Perfect. Okay. So Jeremy, Mr. Technology Reso expert of the universe, how are you?
I'm awesome, and I'm glad to be on a panel with you, because it's been too long.
Yes, I'm actually at a conference right now, believe it or not, in Las Vegas, live with brokers from around the country. I got to tell you, it's very exciting. But anyway, I digress. So tell us about, I know that you guys have been, I venture to say, an early adopter of Remine in general, right? So tell us about your path with Remine and the work you've done with them, and how you've gotten to working with the Docs Plus portion of the tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those of you on the call that are not familiar, FMLS, we're based out of Atlanta, Georgia. We now have over 53,000 MLS subscribers. So we have a very large membership footprint and a lot of members that have a lot of special needs where a lot of our platforms need to meet those needs head on to help them transact business. But for us, you know, in 2018, we started as a lot of MLSs and we started to just add the Remine basic platform. But in 2019, as everyone on the call today is probably very aware, there's a lot of merger and acquisition activity going on out there in our industry. And we ourselves have been a part of that as far as seeing some of our product vendors being consolidated or acquired by other companies. And we did have a forms platform and transaction management and e-signature platform that we did like very much back in the day. And unfortunately, due to that M&A activity, we saw that platform go from a very good platform to declining. The current needs of our brokers, feature requests were not getting added to the point where there were some Saturdays the entire system was down the entire day and agents couldn't write contracts, which is very embarrassing in front of a client, no matter if it's a listing agreement or, you know, purchase and sell agreement. And so when we started looking at our options and did what just like Northern Virginia did and took together a spreadsheet of all the current transaction management platforms out there, looked at a competitive analysis. You know, there's not that many out in the space. We actually stumbled upon conversations with Leo and Jonathan, unbeknownst to us, that they had a transaction management platform available that we weren't that aware of at the time. And so we actually flew out to that transaction management team, and our staff sat down with their staff and did an on-site product review and really kicked the tires a lot more of a full-blown inspection, if you will, and took a look at it and decided, well, we've had some organic growth with Remine Pro and would like to move that into being an MLS-wide offering. So how can we come together and also look at Docs Plus? And at the same time, Remine was launching their Add Edit option. And for those that aren't aware, we allow our brokers to edit their listings with any platform that they would like to use. They can use CoreLogic Matrix. They can use any third-party software that they would like to contract with. But we got in conjunction with Remine to say, let's use Remine Add Edit as a member benefit to manage your listings, not only within FMLS, but also with other MLSs that have that capability for dual entry for members that overlap and want listings in multiple MLSs for their own advertising benefits. And we decided to say, well, let's put Pro and Add Edit and Docs Plus together and let's launch all three. And so we turned on Pro for all of our members in the fall of 2019. And then in 2020 in Q1, we moved forward with turning on Add Edit as well as Docs Plus as the first MLS in the nation to have Docs Plus as a transaction management and e-signature platform. And from there, it's honestly been the sky's the limit on satisfaction, but also customizing the platform to the needs of our local brokers and agents. And I can tell you, Marilyn, I'll attest to Leo that anyone on the call that thinks there's a delay with implementing a fillable form, Remine is the only transaction management platform I'm aware of that has an automated wizard to incorporate all the forms. So their competitors typically have to hand program those from PDFs. They have essentially machine learning that does it all the way from 80 to 90%, and then they go and tweak it and customize it. And so we have hundreds of forms that our state association creates. We have hundreds of forms that we actually create for non-realtor members. And then we have brokerages with hundreds of forms that they want their agents to use for purchase and sell agreements with all of their specific writers, preferred vendors, and all of those were uploaded extremely quickly by Remine using their automated engines. And after the fact, we've sent more and more in, and it's been a great turnaround time from that perspective. So really now where we are today is we have that, start to finish package with Remine, just kind of a long-winded way to answer your question, Marilyn.
Yeah, so tell me about what that value is. It from how just maybe walk through a use case. If I've got Remine and Remine Pro and all of the suite that we're talking about today, how does that help Heather as a realtor? Not Heather, because she's not your market, but someone like Heather. How does that help her or them make it easier to do business?
Yeah, and it's a little bit different from the other transaction management platforms, which combine some of the MLS processes and procedures. But with us, an agent can sit down, they can do a listing presentation after farming a neighborhood for potential buyers through Remine. They look at Remine Pro, look for seller scores, where Remine aggregates information that might cause someone to sell, like they registered for a baby on Amazon, or unfortunately, maybe they filed for a divorce, and they immediately get a seller score to find out in a neighborhood with virtual farming, because they don't want to go to door in today's pandemic realm. But they can say, okay, we've got a seller, knock on their door, they do a listing presentation, and right there they pull up Remine Docs Plus, and they do the seller's agreement, or listing agreement as some often call it. And that listing agreement takes the information and not only moves it to e-signature to sign the exclusive sale agreement, immediately moves it to add edit to enter the listing, and not just FMLS, but other MLSs as well, if they're also members in those MLSs. So they don't have to repeat what they're doing over and over again. And I will say at the same time, for some of our larger brokers, not only does it start the process from contract to editing the listing, it can also, with the open APIs that Remine has, send it to the broker back office system at the same time.
Great.
So you have the broker back office system that reduces dual entry for the agent or listing coordinator. You have multiple MLSs that get the listing at once. It takes the information from the contract. Sometimes those agents are putting that stuff in 3, 4, 5 times. Now they do it once. And really, we're truly into a contract to close. So now through the entire process, the agent then gets a purchase and sell agreement with a potential buyer right through Docs Plus. They go in, they change the listing to pending. It's now under contract. It's going through escrow. They use Docs Plus for any of the adjustments. And the next thing you know, they go into escrow and they close the listing and they're done. And so really, from listing presentation to close, they can do all of that right there in the Remine platform in the way that we have it configured, with the full suite of products of Pro, Add Edit, and Docs Plus. And it's really a time saver. And I know Heather had mentioned earlier, and mentioned more so on our prep call, how it saves her time. If you have the full package, it saves you even more time. And again, it does integrate from that. And I will say one aspect that also helped us in our conversion is that our previous forms platform did provide us all the historical information, the tiles or the contracts, if you will. And we were able to upload all of the historical transactions from our brokers and agents from previous platforms into Docs Plus, and they converted that for us.
That sounds awesome. And for those that don't, I think you mentioned it, but just in case people didn't hear it, FMLS is actually broker owned. And as you know, sometimes this is a very split vote on where transaction management should sit, right? Some brokers believe it should sit on the broker side. Some believe it should sit on the MLS side. Have you seen any of your brokerages kind of flip on their thinking about that and say, well, the system is so easy, I'm just going to defer to let the MLS sort of take this part of the process over?
Absolutely, because they're saving money for us in a couple of areas. Is they were paying for dual entry ad edit software.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can get that as an MLS benefit directly from FMLS through Remine Ad Edit. And they are or were paying for transaction management and e-signature platforms. Some of that was fueled by the fact that they integrated with their back-end brokerage systems, or Remine Docs Plus provides that today. So the brokers can actually reduce their cost. And I think in general, there has been a lot of conversations that 10 years ago, transaction management wasn't necessarily an MLS core offering. And a lot of MLSs are moving to transaction management, and e-signature is an MLS core offering and should be an option for MLS-wide benefits. And it's no different than other platforms we offer today. We offer Cloud CMA. Some brokers buy their own CMA softwares if they want a competitive advantage, but they know they have that from us as one CMA platform, if you will, that specializes in that. And just like with Remine Docs Plus, they can buy another broker-based solution, but they don't have to. The good thing with Docs Plus is they get the control they need at the broker level. So if a broker has a specific purchase and sell agreement package, they can force their agents to use that through Docs Plus and use their broker specific package so that the agent doesn't stray away from what the broker wants as disclosures and different areas of fillable form information, where the agent doesn't go into the wild, wild west. And so it actually helps reduce the broker's risk management by having permission level control in Docs Plus on what packages their agents are using, which is a feature that we did have Remine add that they didn't have it from day one. And that's one of the big features we've had moving along inside of the evolution of Docs Plus and a lot of how our brokers and agents use transaction management. And Remine's been great to augment the workflow and the functionality for the requests that we see from that perspective. And from the adoption perspective, also, as Heather had mentioned, we actually created CE level accredited training for Docs Plus. So we have a class certified in the state of Georgia. It's actively being certified in the state of Alabama. So our agents get 3 hours of CE credit to learn how to do electronic transaction management. I can tell you last year, through the pandemic, we issued over 17,000 CE credits through our FMLS Training Institute. A lot of those were on the Remine platform because the agents needed to learn how to do transaction management and e-signature electronically. So Remine Docs Plus was a huge hit for our CE accredited class. And now they know how to use it because they needed their CE, and then they paid attention in the class and they got the CE, but they got the training they needed. And it was really a win-win, which also helps our tech support team not get as many calls because they learned how to use the platform in CE accredited training. And FMLS would be happy to help others also if they need some content on how to get CE accredited with Remine in their states, or we'll help do it for you from our training institutes. That's been a big win to get over the learning curve as part of the conversion from our previous platform into Docs Plus that we have today. And I can tell you in 6 months through April, we had over 700,000 transactions with at least one signature. So 700,000 transactions in Docs Plus with at least one signature. So from a performance perspective, we have definitely put it to the test if you consider that volume of electronic transactions and e-signatures.
So one of the things I love that I'm hearing you say, Jeremy, and Heather, it sounds like NVAR feels this way too, is let's face it, this industry is changing at, I don't even know what pace to call it, right? It's just fast, very, very fast. And the best MLSs and the best associations today are finding really proactive ways, not only to deliver programs that make sense for agents, but to really partner with brokerages, right? Brokerages are getting slammed. Their margins are getting hit from all sides. Their agents are getting, obviously the market's crazy. But I was just with 500 big brokers this morning, and they're talking about their margins and about competitive hits and disruptors, and they got a lot to do, right? Just to keep their head above water. So there's an opportunity, and I love what I'm hearing you say that you're doing, Jeremy, in Georgia, is to really partner and help them, and not to the old expression, level the playing field. That's not what we're talking about. It's where a broker says that I think my MLS can help me with this. So I don't have to pay for another transaction management software. I don't have to pay for electronic signature, and that it makes easier for my agents to collaborate with other agents in the marketplace because they're all using the same system. Good for you. That's a really good strategy and something that we should all be talking about. The other thing I wanted to mention for those, again, on the call that may not yet have a transaction management system, or that may not have promoted it, the one that they've had, or have just people don't like it for whatever reason. We just finished a study for one MLS. Usage of transaction management is by far the number one, obviously second to the MLS system itself. 91% usage is what we're seeing. So this really is a gotta have. If you have not thought of it as a core tool, it really has become a core tool. And if you want your association and MLS to stay relevant, you really got to think of it that way. It's just kind of a gotta have. But I have a couple of questions coming in from the audience, Leo, that I wanted to throw back to you. One is just a numbers question. And the question is from Tanya. Approximately how many MLSs are using Remine today? And she didn't say Remine Docs Plus. I'm assuming she means Remine in general. Maybe you can answer it from both perspectives.
Absolutely. We now have, we're lucky enough to count 57 MLSs as partners.
Okay.
And depending on who you are, that might be a small number, but our customers tend to be on the larger side, like Jeremy. So that's actually north of 1.1 million realtors. So it is a very large swath of the licensed population. And then on the Docs product, as Jeremy said, he was our flagship launch, if you will, followed by NVAR Alaska. And this week, Karen Cage launched to 17,000 realtors. And I would say since the announcement a couple of weeks ago that NAR is officially sunsetting the ZipLogix member benefit, mine and Spinetto's phone have been very busy. And again, just pure transparency, that onboarding process was a very detailed part of our onboarding. So for folks that are trying to make kind of that October 1 launch date to have some overlap between the cutoff date on January 1, the seats are filling fast where we could actually still hit those marks for folks. So if folks are seriously considering it and don't want to have a couple months of overlap with no product, and they're on the fence and, you know, they're in a committee meeting. And to Jeremy's point, when we first developed it, we weren't really talking about it as we were fine tuning and making sure the experience was seamless. A lot of folks don't know we have it. I've been in the experience, I would say in the last week or two, where folks have the 3 or 4 other ones on the board and didn't know that we had one. So are calling us to join last minute tech committees as they're making their final decisions.
That's great. Okay, I'm going to ask the tough question because I know everyone that's in the MLS and association world has to know the answer to this. So I'll ask it so that they don't have to. And it's kind of a 2-part question. The first question is, who are you going to sell to? No. Are you going to sell? Under what circumstances would you sell? But here's the more important question, I think, because we know you can't tell us that until the press release comes out. It's called public markets and no one can talk about that. If someone works with you today, because that is, and I'm sure Heather, you guys, and Jeremy, I'm sure you guys talk about this at your board meetings, right? What protections for data, distribution, sharing of information, what protections do you bake in so that people can feel like even if you do sell because, hey, it's called America and capitalism and it could happen, right? Anybody could be sold at any time. How can people feel comfortable that if they work with you, you've still got their back no matter who owns the company?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Marilyn. So the first part of it has been asked of John and I since we started the company, when we were just 2 people and a laptop and didn't have much. So, I mean, for anyone who's known, our goal has been to become the incumbent player. We've been very focused on just building really good technology. So for us, it's we want to be here long term. So if that's a possibility, we end up selling, we really want to pick somewhere that people would be excited about and that will give us longevity. So that's the way we look at it.
Okay.
So we really, if that ever happens, we're not looking to do it anytime soon or focused on it. But if that happens, part of the process would be to select somewhere that people would be excited about. But more specifically on the contract wise, because that is what can be controlled and you know, spelled out in black and white, is how our agreements work. You know, the vast majority, and I'm not saying 100% because we still have some of that legacy upsell credit card revenue from our first launches 5 years ago, but 100% of our new revenue going forward as of 3 years ago is 100% enterprise revenue from MLSs and associations. Okay. With that said, our relationship to our customers is wholly sacrosanct, because if we screw that up, there's no more company and no more revenue. Right. So for us, it's binary, and we've gotten the feedback from our partners that our contracts are very straightforward. You know, the use of your data, whether it's MLS or the agent input information to the contracts, is specifically for the benefit of the agents, and we do not have a quote unquote side hustle of data where we cutesy it up and say we have a different way of labeling it to sell it to another industry. There's none of that. It's in black and white. Secondly, there's a change of control clause that's requested on almost every contract where, you know, if it's a 5-year agreement and we sell the next day to somebody you don't like, there's a way out. And then thirdly, especially in the transaction management, because I actually just had this conversation with an MLS who voted us in yesterday. Can't disclose it till it's signed, but a very large organization will be getting announced in the next couple of weeks as we get through the contract, where we actually are putting in writing what Jeremy referenced with his transitions, which I'll give credit to his predecessor vendor, were very helpful, where we will actually zip the files and do a bulk download with the canonical ID so we can track the agent to their files. And so when we launched in Jeremy's market, we were able to match those existing docs and people were able to log in and see 8 years of history, which is really cool. So, you know, we truly believe in cooperation with our competitors. I don't think the future is kind of a one product by itself stack. I think where we really play well is in this cooperative world where, you know, Jeremy kind of pioneered it in Rezo and having a standard data dictionary in really easy, good ways to jump back and forth. And again, to not get off of the docs product, but our ad edit, the UI is awesome and the multiple entry into multiple databases is awesome. But the one thing that most people don't know is that we actually have an API that follows the business rules. So, you know, I see a bifurcation of brokerages in the ones that focus on tech and the ones that focus on the traditional way of doing things. And I think they're both right and they both will thrive. But for the ones that are tech forward and are spending millions and millions of dollars on their own tech, there is a portion of them that don't want to ever log into any of our systems. Mine included, Matrix, Paragon, DynaConnection, none of them. They want to keep their agents in this tech ecosystem. And where we're excited in a market like Jeremy's, you can actually do that. You can write to our API. So if you have a customized instance of Salesforce or something you built from the ground up on Ruby, Rails, or whatever, you never actually need to interface with any of our systems. It can write directly to our API, follow Jeremy's business rules, pull back through the data distribution API, and the agents can be kept in their entire ecosystem. But then you have the other side of the coin, which Heather touched on, where the smaller independents who are awesome local incumbents and you just know the area and are experts in the area don't have the multi-billion-dollar budgets that are backed by funds, still have awesome UI delivered as a member benefit via their MLS and or association and are able to compete in that competitive landscape.
So Jack is asking a question, which I think you started to just answer, but maybe I'll ask you to expand on it. His question, is there any planned integration with front-end listing input to create listings from listing agreements? So Jack, I think, are you talking about, so I might input it into Matrix and then I want it to populate over automatically to Remine? Maybe you can clarify, but I think that's what he's asking.
Well,
Let's
and
talk
Marilyn,
about
I did some commentary back to Jack there, Marilyn, in the chat window to help answer. He was actually looking at, can you go from listing agreement to listing? And absolutely, that's what we have today. You go from listing agreement to it's inserted directly through Remine Ad Edit into, for us, CoreLogic Matrix. It's inserted directly to a neighboring MLS into Paragon. It's in the works to be inserted into DynaConnections Connect MLS. Any MLS out there, and they all essentially support either RETS update or the Rezo Web API update. Remine Docs Plus and Ad Edit combined can do both of exactly what you're looking for: listing input to listing in the MLS, to purchase and sell agreement to close. So if you have both of those platforms together, then either you use Remine as your primary MLS provider, or you can use Paragon or DynaConnections or Matrix or whomever, as long as they have update technology in place, and many of them do today to help their brokers manage listings, then boom, it's right there. It's already built in to Remine.
Well, and again, back to my point, Leo, and both of you guys, you're right. There is kind of a bifurcation of the way that brokerages are looking at their role in technology. And you're basically saying we're agnostic to that. You know, one broker wants us to do this way, another broker wants us to do that way. Again, an MLS has to think about this stuff right now. If we want to stay relevant, right, we've got to think about servicing and supporting the technology strategies of a complete spectrum of brokerages. And so what I'm hearing you guys say, and again, I think just from a layman's perspective, using today's stuff and not 20 years ago stuff, Just the fact that you're using current RESO standards as an example, right? It just makes it easier. And you're taking advantage of that new thinking, new approach, not to use another geeky word, but interoperability between these things, right? You're making it easier for people. So MLSs can't be one take it or leave it kind of approaches anymore. We just can't, right? You have brokerages that are all over the map, looking at all different kinds of relationships and partnerships. So someone like a Remine who understands that and who's embraced it and has enabled it really makes a big difference. It's not just about the agent experience, which sounds like from what Heather's saying is great. It's also about enabling the technology ecosystem. And so, great if you can have people on your committees that are from those brokerages, get some of the CTOs from those larger companies. I mean, sometimes even at the corporate level, sometimes it's helpful because they understand more about where the bigger ecosystem is going. They can really help you make good decisions about the right platform. And what I loved what you said, Heather, is a lot of people won't make a move because they're just afraid. They're afraid that they're going to get the calls about, I love that, whatever it was. We've had it for 25 years and don't move my cheese. What I hear you saying, actually both of you saying is, yeah, that there is some of that. And I know there's people that don't move because of that. What I'm hearing you guys say is don't be afraid of that because we made a move. And I'm sure you had a few people complaining because that's how it works, right? But the net of it, the net effect for the market was a good thing, right? So don't be afraid of those few people that might be upset about making. Is that a fair statement, Heather?
It is, and I will tell you, our users are going up every month. So obviously, Docs Plus is doing something right.
Yeah, and Marilyn, we turned off our previous provider in December of last year. We went, read only with October to give them all time to finish in-process contracts, and then turned it off in December of last year. And with any conversion, I just expected a flood of calls January, February, March. And what's odd about that is that our call volume is down slightly after the 3 or 4 months of doing a conversion to what is highly utilized compared to where they were last year, where we weren't doing any conversion at all. And so the call volume shows that, as long as you do the training aspect of it, which I think is a very big help, we did not see the issues that we thought we would see in just sheer volume in doing a conversion, or the number of complaints that hit my inbox of kicking and screaming to adopt the new technology. I think that a lot of our agents weren't using transaction management in general, and the pandemic forced them to technology leapfrog into using it. And when they did that leapfrog, they went right into Docs Plus. So they were none the wiser of the previous system. So there's a little window of opportunity that if you don't have an enterprise-wide transaction management and e-signature platform, you can get a great deal of volume buying power as an MLS, and then the brokers can choose to shave some cost off into their own operations and allow the agents to move into doing, virtual closings and all those things that are, I think, here to stay for the future.
So let me ask you a question about training, because you brought up the CE credit, which, by the way, is an awesome idea for any kind of technology training. If you can get CE credit, do it, because you definitely will get more participation. It stands to reason. But Leo, you talked about working with the different types of brokerages. So let's start at the really tech savvy end of things. Do you work directly with the folks that are trying to seamlessly integrate the data into their systems? So does your tech support help with their tech support or help with their CTOs to figure out how to make that work, or is the MLS responsible for some of that?
Yeah, the answer is it depends. As we said, we have 57 customers and they range from 100,000 to 1,000 size MLS. So we have partners that have a 20-person staff that is extremely robust and larger than our support staff. And then we have folks that are basically 3 staff people. So in all of our products, it's really understanding what suits your customers' needs best. Like Jeremy Crawford's organization is very good, I would say, not on level 1, almost level 2 support. And then if there's an escalation, they escalate to us versus in Heather's organization, they do level 1 support, but if there's level 2, the agents escalate directly to us and can reach out to us directly. And that's all part of the negotiation and what you're looking for. And what we've learned about everything is training agents to change their behavior is very difficult. So if there is something that works and has worked in your market, we want to leverage that experience as you are the boots on the ground partner who knows your people and knows how they like to be interacted with.
And Marilyn, I'll even add to that is that if you are a smaller MLS and you're in the Southeast somewhere and you're interested in this, we can help you with training and tech support FMLS. We are actually providing Docs Plus to Middle Georgia MLS and providing them the training and tech support on Docs Plus and Remine Pro from that perspective. And there is other MLSs that we've announced or are working towards that. So we're happy to share in this MLS community the knowledge that we've discovered along the way, the training we put together, the knowledge base, the tech support. And we find that tech support, customer support sometimes does have a little local flair when you're dealing with state forms and you're dealing with local broker forms and municipalities, which Heather has in her area as well. It's good to have local customer support. So if you're in the South and you need help with that, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, then we're happy to help as a partner alongside with Remine and jointly make sure it's done right for you as a smaller MLS. Nothing to do with mergers and acquisitions. Keep your name, keep your autonomy, but we're happy to lend a helping hand at the same time, and all of us as our peers and partners in the MLS community.
Okay, so I just put up on the screen where people should go. If they're looking for more information, Leo, they should go to info.remine.com or sales@remine.com. And then you guys help them more about it and help them understand what you do.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody for attending today. Thank you, Jeremy and Heather and Leo. This was very elucidating, as they say. It looks like a great system, definitely next gen. So if you're going to make a leap and you feel like you have to make a leap or you want to make a leap, I'd suggest try for the next gen, right? Like no reason to go backwards. So, okay, well, thanks everybody. Thank you for attending. And again, info.remine.com or sales@remine.com. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.